You want a hypothetical?
Didn't we used to play the hypothetical game a lot, and I roasted you for having really bad hypotheticals?
Yeah. But you also had some stupid ones.
No, I'm so good at coming up with them.
Come up with one right now.
Okay, our podcast becomes successful,
Unlikely.
but it means that everything about your past is public.
What does everything mean?
All your regrets. This is
have
a
no
real
regrets.
scenario if we get popular, by the way.
Okay, so is it like Black Mirror, like where I have a contact lens of all my moments ever are just publicly available?
Okay, I'm sorry. All texts you've ever sent and received are public.
From like when I'm a kid?
Yes, forever. And it's a searchable database.
Nah,
No?
not a chance.
Welcome to Plot Matrix Season 1, Episode 6. This is our follow-along screenwriting podcast. On this season, we are writing a movie about a fictional treasure hunt industry called Linwood Treasure Co. And today, we will be violating HIPAA guidelines and releasing all of Brian's medical history.
I'd rather you have that than like my text messages when I was 12. Does that include my AIM messages?
No.
Oh,
This is iMessage and SMS. And MMS.
yeah, still no. I'd be more inclined if it did include my AM.
Okay, but in actuality, last week on this podcast, we brainstormed the details of our main antagonist, someone that we've been referring to as the Incumbent. And they have dominated this treasure hunt for decades. And so this week, Brian will be coming back with the homework he did after last week's episode, talking about the key characters that are involved in the Incumbent and sharing their historical timeline. If this is your first episode of Plot Matrix, we also invite you to go back to episode 2, where we really in earnest started to brainstorm this movie idea. So you did this same sort of process for Linwood itself to explain the whole long historical context of the treasure hunt and how it became this global sensation that sort of ebbed and flowed. And now you bring to us the Incumbent. Is there anything you want to say before you get started?
I definitely think this timeline as a whole is a little bit less extra than everything I did with Linwood. Linwood being over 200 years definitely required a lot of historical data.
Yeah.
I tied this a little bit to history, not nearly as much. It was more so about the singular person, but it's not nearly going to be as in-depth as the Linwood 200-year timeline.
Right, and this is actually a character that's going to be appearing in our movie.
After we make our way through the whole timeline, we can talk about some of the motivations for decisions I made, keeping in mind that we were actually going to explore this character throughout the entire story, but I'm just excited for you to see kind of what I have cooked up here.
Okay, jump into it.
All right, so we're going to start with the upbringing of our CEO. On April 27th, 1953, Dennis Hudson enters the world via Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He's born to Alfie, a carpenter, and Lee, a history professor at Chatham University. Lee was born at too awkward of a time to be a Linwood runner herself, but she knew of the competition from some fellow faculty who had run the final race before his hiatus. Dennis's favorite bedtime stories are those of competitions past. His first childhood dream is to traverse the world like the legendary Linwood runners. The drastically different careers of the Hudson parents gives Dennis an academic's inquisitiveness with a blue-collar sensibility. He's heavily involved in his school, leading numerous clubs before becoming student council president. From an early age, it's apparent that he possesses the rare charisma that politicians and TV personalities make careers out of. Like all good American boys, Dennis grows up playing numerous little league sports. He excels in football and baseball, building a reputation of fierce competitiveness with a disgust for losing. As a sophomore in high school, Denny the Stud Hudson leads the varsity baseball team to a controversial Pennsylvania state championship. He constantly steals signs throughout the season, violating one of baseball's sacred, unwritten rules. Regardless, his classmates celebrate their first trophy in decades, as well as Dennis's selection to the All-State team, and all is quickly forgotten. In the spring of 1971, Dennis's mother drags him to the retirement party of fellow Chatham faculty member Julia Mancini. The former art history professor is finally hanging up her lectern to join some old friends that have submitted for the 1972 Linwood raffle. Dennis, an aimless young man weeks away from graduating high school, begs Mancini for a chance to help their effort. He secures an unpaid internship and begins working that summer. Dennis spends the next year and a half as a research assistant for Mancini's team, combing through any and all records he can find on the treasure hunt. He contacts past winners and competitors to discover their strategies, often posing as an innocent high school student who won't be running the hunt himself. Dennis quickly gains Wonder Kid status within Mancini's team, as he constantly exceeds every expectation of his elders. He identifies small similarities between the structure and clues of post-World War II treasure hunts that seem to suggest what the upcoming hunt may entail. In July of 1972, Mancini's team is selected to compete in the hunt, and his theory is put to the test. Unfortunately, Mancini's team doesn't have enough funds to bring Dennis with them, and he remains in the States while the older team members travel the globe. While he waits out their painfully long 3-week absence, he vows that he'll never miss out on the actual field work ever again. The Mancini team returns home immensely proud. They made it all the way to the final country of Brazil before the prize was ultimately found by a wealthy tycoon raising a section of the Amazon rainforest. Dennis's hunch was correct. The same general path of the last 3 hunts was the blueprint for this year as well, which helped the Mancini team place in the top 5 against unlikely odds. The team commends him for his selfless help and dedicates the entire run to their young intern. Okay, so that's the basic childhood up until he's about 19 or 20.
Yes. Okay. He is Anakin Skywalker. Hear me out.
Okay.
Basically, there are the early warning signs here of how he was basically going to destroy like the value system of the treasure hunt, right? He is basically doing something that I would think would not be thought of as very sportsmanlike by, instead of actually solving the substance of the treasure hunt, he's reverse engineering the structure of it.
Right.
I would kind of expect Mancini to have discouraged this behavior from him when she finds out that he's doing this reverse engineering process. He's scolded and said not to do that, but he just keeps coming back with this amazing progress that is really just a result of his bending the rules. And then when he is unable to join them on the treasure hunt that they compete on, it's basically like Anakin's denied status as a Jedi Master.
Yeah, it was a very pouty kid, is what I was imagining.
Yeah.
Just like, I have earned this right. You know, I've done everything, but there's just not enough funds.
No, I mean, but that is what I picked up on, that there's early warning signs where he is going to leapfrog this team that's mentoring him to the dark side because he's just dead set on winning.
One of the early signs of his character, too, that is so small, but I put a lot of thought into was the sign stealing. I originally played around with the idea of a completely different Dennis where he was like a little league coach and he kind of fought the umpire to away to his title. I just wanted to put something in there that made it feel like he was willing to go that extra mile or break the little smart part of the rules that isn't quite there in order to secure the win. And sign stealing is something that actually happened in the MLB. It was a big scandal about 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago.
Can you say what that is?
Sign stealing?
Yeah.
So if you have a runner on second, the runner can see the catcher and the signs that they're giving to the pitcher, and that decides what the pitcher pitches. So basically, it's knowing the next move, right?
Okay.
And when you have a runner on second, typically it's just part of the game that, you know, they're looking for the signs, they're looking to give their batter the advantage. The scandal 4 years ago was that there was a camera in center field pointing at the catcher for the entire game. So even if there were no runners on base, they were learning what the next pitch was. So the batter could prepare for it and then sit back for certain pitches and then just hit the ones that they knew were coming. Because half of baseball is just not knowing what the next pitch is going to be. So one of the unwritten rules, because baseball is full of these rules that aren't in the rule book, but it's for the spirit of the game, is sign stealing is kind of frowned upon, but it happens. And I imagine back in the 60s, the 70s, he doing that would have been, you know, other teams would be crying to the umpire that it's not fair, he's cheating, they shouldn't be allowed to do it, throw him out. But it's like, there's no rule there, so I'm allowed to do it.
Yeah.
So that's why it's one of those things where it's marred in controversy, but all is quickly forgotten because they have the title and they're able to move on. And that's going to work its way back into the actual competitions itself, which is they're going to adjust the rules to combat whatever Linwood does in the previous competition, but Dennis is always one step ahead.
Yeah, and I think that what's important is that there's no showing your work in Linwood or in baseball. It's just like, yeah, we can't disclose to you how we decoded this clue. That's proprietary information.
Yeah.
So because there's none of that, it's just who can perform the best. And a lot of the tension that forms is basically cultural and not necessarily rule breaking.
Exactly. And I think that's the best distinction, is it is truly cultural. It's that image that you garner, but at the end of the day, it's not going to impact whether or not you're able to compete.
Yeah. So I would say Dennis later on is going to have that reputation. And I would almost assume he's brash about it. I think about like a certain rich person saying that they're smart for getting out of paying their taxes.
Yeah. Another sports example is Pat Beverly is like the guy that everybody loves to hate because he's cocky, he's in your face, he talks a lot of trash, but that's the persona that he's accumulated and held on to. He's like, yep, this is me, and I'm going to get in your head, and you're going to make the mistake because you know what I'm about to do. So Dennis to me seems like somebody who's going to just own it, and it's going to be very polarizing, and there are going to be people who are diehard fans and people who love to hate him.
And his fans are probably insufferable.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you continue.
We left off at the Mancini team not winning the hunt, but placing in the top 5. So shortly after their return, the Mancini team disbands and Dennis is brought back down to earth. The competitive fire within him has truly been lit, however, and he plans for an eventual return to the Linwood treasure hunt. Fairly broke after a year of unpaid work, he returns home and joins his father's carpentry business. Over the next 6 years, Dennis lives as frugally as possible, moonlighting multiple gigs and saving up every spare cent. By 1978, he raises $17,000 of the then $25,000 entry fee. After approaching some family, friends, and old coworkers, including an aging Julia, to spot the rest of the fee, he submits his application and awaits the raffle drawing. While Dennis waits for the result, he studies the upcoming regulation changes. For only the 3rd time in its history, Linwood will appoint a new game master for the 1980 competition and beyond. Dennis infers that the next few competitions will take place only on one continent in an effort to combat gas shortages. He assumes that clues will be much more historically and artistically driven rather than travel-based, so he develops a purely volume-driven approach. The more diverse mind you have tackling clues, the faster you find the solution. His expansive team of unpaid college interns is a Hail Mary attempt at winning. If the treasure hunt is more travel-oriented, he will be swiftly left behind. The team is luckily given a spot in the competition, and Dennis knows this is his moment. As fate would have it, the entire competition takes place on one continent, North America. The field is relentlessly competitive, but on August 12, 1980, after traveling from Canada to Mexico to the US, Dennis Hudson uncovers $12.5 million behind the Sun Bowl in El Paso, Texas. The team of no-name, barely funded kids pull off the Cinderella story upset. Their victory is due largely to 3 interns who worked for 14 hours straight, decoding various parts of the second-to-last clue that gave them a lead they never relinquished. Dennis takes almost no prize money for himself, instead repaying his sponsors handsomely and splitting an additional $400,000 between his interns. In October of 1980, Dennis begins budgeting the remaining $12 million in prize money for the 1984 competition. By the end of the year, insert company name here, is officially founded.
It seems like you forgot to name his company.
No, I didn't forget. I forgot. I don't know. I can't think of a name that it needs to feel sleek, but it needs to definitely still let you know that it's a treasure hunting company.
Yeah, right. No, I probably am better with names, being the one who named this podcast.
Yeah, why don't you start pulling your weight, huh? I'm doing timeline after timeline. What are you doing, talking?
You want me to come up with a name?
Come up with a name right now.
This is pretty good, actually. Finders Keepers.
We'll work on that.
That's good. What are you talking about?
Is it sleek?
No, it is a contrast to Linwood Treasure Co. It is brash. It is in your face. Finders Keepers. I mean, that's great.
The first comment that says whether or not they like it is going to decide whether or not I keep that.
Let's do a poll. All right. Do you want Finders Keepers or Denny's?
I didn't even think about that. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll put a poll.
Do we need to actually talk about anything about this section, or you want to just continue first?
Do you have any thoughts on the victory?
I mean, I like that you have the unpaid interns, just because it's planting the seeds of like exploiting people. So let's just put a pin in that for once we start talking about the team that he forms later on.
Okay. Also, quick shout out to El Paso, Texas. Great city. Love that place. It deserved to have a championship in there. Okay. And with that, we're going to go through a speed run of important moments in Denny's history. Over the next 9 competitions and 2 game masters, Dennis Hudson's company adapts and wins every treasure hunt. While each competition has the heroes, highlights, and controversies that become folklore, here are some of the most important moments during the reign. 1992, Hudson's first real sign of competition. A team of high school friends sticks closely to Hudson's every step, even passing them halfway through the competition. Their success is due to an intern at the company secretly feeding the team, comprised of their friends, info on Hudson's strategy and location. With only 3 clues left, Hudson finally catches on to the intern's tactics. That rival team disappears during a cave expedition in the Dominican Republic, and that intern is promptly fired. They're given a generous severance package and are never heard from again. 2000. Linwood introduces a new game master at the turn of the century, and they institute a host of changes to deliberately try and cripple Hudson. Dennis himself has not yet seen the merits of some new technology, so he continues to opt for more classic resources. This immediately backfires on the company, as clues for this specific hunt are much more technologically focused. In order to stay competitive, they send out multiple espionage teams to track down the leaders of the race. Hudson makes the call just in time. One of the teams they follow accidentally reveals the final clue. They squeak out the victory, celebrating 20 years of dominance. 2006. In between races, Hudson sends out a spy team to follow multiple Linwood employees, considering the espionage of 2000 worked so well. While many reveal nothing, one negligent employee doesn't hide their tracks as well as they should. Once the coast is clear, Hudson's team uncovers the clue a full 6 months before the competition. They leapfrog a massive amount of clues, putting them a full week in front of their other competitors. The 2008 competition is practically over before it begins. 2012. Hudson's team gets off to a hideous start when their private jet nearly crashes during takeoff to the first clue. Hudson is nearly killed, though they manage to claw back and win yet again after sending out their B team to run in their stead. Hudson believes their plane was sabotaged by Linwood in retaliation for spying last time. He retires from the field at the end of the hunt, having risked enough over the past 32 years. He continues to command the company from his war room, instating a new field general in his place. So that pretty much wraps up what I considered the important moments of the following decades after their first win. Obviously, there are tons of controversies that we can develop more later, but these felt like the really big moments that I wanted to get in there of, just the spying on other teams, the way that they assume other teams' strategies as their own and then kind of act like they created it in the first place, the outright cheating with the spying on the Linwood employee, and the leaving the field behind. I know that's something we talked about last episode. So if it works for you, I've already made the decision that he's going to start the competition that we're looking at in our script in the war room, and then as the team continues to slip up over the course of the entire story, he's going to leave and join the field because he is the one that can make sure his team wins.
Right. So he probably walks with a cane or something from this previous accident.
Yeah. He's a lot older now, but he's still got that boyish confidence of like, it's me. I'm the leader. I know how to win. It's not this team around me. I'm the guy. And part of what I was thinking about too with this of re-entering the field is one of my favorite movies, Tron Legacy. Don't roll your eyes. It's a great movie and you know it. Daft Punk score, beautiful visuals, surprisingly better effects than we get from most movies today. But there's a great part of that movie, which is just when Jeff Bridges' character re-enters the field, it's this whole new dynamic. So there can almost be something there of Linwood being like, oh, this person has just been hiding in their warehouse. And now it's our chance to go and maybe finally get rid of this competitor that's been a nail on our side for so long. Maybe Linwood is thinking if we can take him out here, then the company dies with him.
Okay. Yeah. And I think what we're trying to set up is this descent into madness, this flying too close to the sun, like hubris is his downfall because he's trying to hold on to this. So it's almost like his inner tension is his, it's not a midlife crisis, but it's like him being unwilling to let go of retirement and his own capability. So it's not just letting go of the incumbent status of winning the treasure hunt every year and what his life has been dedicated to. He's also at that age now where he's just holding on to life.
And it feels like that classic old business person mentality of, I'm still young. I'm still going. There's no end for me in sight. But it's like in reality, you're getting up there. You're getting closer and closer, and you need to start looking to the future. But they don't want to relinquish the reins because they don't want to let go of the fact that they are getting older. But that's practically it for the moments. I just want to talk now a little bit about Finders Keepers or whatever the name of
Or Denny's. Or Denny's.
Or Denny's, the name of the company itself, and the company itself. So I have some bullet points here that we can just kind of shoot through. Primarily, right off the bat, we have the fact that his hunger for staying on top of the competition is what destroys the competitiveness. Mm-hmm. So his outright domination, and I know we've talked about this a lot in the past couple episodes, is really changing the face of the competition and ruining it in a way for a lot of competitors and a lot of fans. Not his rabid fans. His rabid fans couldn't be more excited about another 4 years of Dennis Hudson domination. And building on those fans, I would think that this company would be sort of a cultural icon. I don't think people would really fully understand what they do, but they would have a really cool logo, something that would be very fashionable, just to help build their image.
So there's this one actual real world treasure hunt company that I can put some things on the screen because I can't remember the name of it right this second. But they're basically around, it was more of a shipwreck recovery operation, but they sort of spun it into a brand, but it's all sort of family friendly and just a little cheesy. And yeah, I'll maybe put that on the screen, but that would be a good reference. But maybe we'll just do an episode on real world references.
I think that'd be great because I haven't looked up any treasure hunting companies or treasure hunts.
Yeah, I want to keep it out of my
mind completely. Yeah. And I think it'd be fun for us to go back and maybe watch some movies or some documentaries, whatever.
Right. But there's also a lot here in the backstory that just because none of this is necessarily on camera, except for maybe the plane crash would be a clear impact, I would be okay stealing some ideas you have here for our film, if it's appropriate. Because one big thing that I see is there's already this entire B plot with like keeping people in line within his company. Just because if there are spies who are doing this, who are out there finding clues for him, who's to say they're going to report back instead of just going to get the treasure themselves? Because, I think from our discussion about the rules of the treasure hunt, you don't have to be in the treasure hunt to find the treasure necessarily.
Right. Yeah, I have an idea for that later.
Okay.
Probably in next episode that we'll talk about, but I definitely think there's merit to that idea.
Yeah, I mean, it brings to mind that you had part of Linwood's backstory that you implied that he had killed someone. And I think at the time I said maybe that's a better incumbent thing. So that's a small detail, but I would probably let go of that out of Linwood's backstory just because Dennis is just somebody that appears in our story. And I think that's his increasingly brash transgressions is such an important way to form him into this actual full-blown tycoon.
Yeah, which is the next point that I have too, is that he is a truly eccentric tycoon, somebody who loves the media, loves doing his talk show interviews and hoisting up his trophies, making it all about him and his company, but being a face for the public, being somebody who's really out there, strong personality that can generate fans like what he would have.
Yeah, which I mentioned superstitions. He needs weird idiosyncrasies.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I also have that the company, like I said a little bit earlier, they interpret regulations super cleverly. So they're the reason why Linwood has been changing from year to year and why they'll institute new game masters and new clues and all that. But it's their interpretation of the rules that has given them the ability to have such a winning streak.
Right. And I want to say, I think rules are the wrong word, rules and regulations, because I don't think that Linwood is super interested in being an active regulation throughout the treasure hunt. I think it's more about how they set up the treasure hunt from the beginning and the methodology you need to go through to solve it. That's what changes more so than there's not a referee.
Right, but the more unspoken rules, I think the not killing your other competitors.
Okay, all
stuff
right.
like that.
Yeah.
And
the culture of the hunt.
The culture is probably the better word.
Right.
The spying is another thing too, where, maybe they would try to deliberately change something where if we catch you trying to spy on us beforehand, then automatic disqualification.
Sure. Okay.
So I imagine too that they also at the end of each competition, they would go through and adapt really well. So they might spend the whole first year after the competition just evaluating what they did, what other teams did, and maybe even pickpocketing some of those other teams and taking their best competitors. Obviously, they're the only one with a guaranteed bid. So if you're a historian and you were just on this treasure hunt, you did a good job, and then this company comes up and offers you $100K a year to just come and join their team, and maybe run this competition again, it's going to be hard to say no. Just some sort of offer for whatever it may be, but taking the best assets of other teams and absorbing them and just growing and growing and growing as they become wealthier as a company.
Right. And keeping them in line.
Keeping them in line. Exactly. And that's really all I had. There's still a lot to be played with overall, but in terms of an outline of character and a fleshing out of the company, I think we're getting closer and closer with each episode.
Right. Because I think what we're building to before we really revisit too much of this is we want to get sort of an opening scene written down so that we can do a table read of it and that there's just enough pieces in place that we can put pen to page and start to see how things feel.
Definitely.
So yeah, we will return to The Incumbent, but thank you so much for listening today. Of course, we welcome all of your feedback to hear more about what Dennis Hudson's backstory was, where we find them by the time that our movie starts. So you can, of course, give that feedback to us in a couple different ways. YouTube comments, DMing us on Instagram or at PlotMatrix, or now leaving us a voicemail. The phone number is on your screen, and it is 424-245-0601. So, thank you so much for your work today, Brian. Anything you want to say before we sign off?
Nope.
What's your blood type?
My blood I actually don't know my blood type. My mom's been trying to get me to figure that out for years, and no one will tell me it. It's like a big ordeal.
Well, get a blood test.
It's fine. I'm just going to say I'm O positive and hope that nothing bad happens.
No, get a blood test. That's a fun episode. Let's go.
Let's get a blood test. No, I'm good.
No. It's not plot matrix until we break HIPAA guidelines.
It's true. Okay, fair enough.
Okay, my name is Jackson Casimiro, and this is Brian Smail III. Plot Matrix is a production of the Lunation Lab. Learn more at lunationlab.com.
See you next week.